Well, we're delighted to have RL joining us. So hello, welcome to the Radio Book Club. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, Other People's Pets, as Arsen said, is the title of the novel, and pets and animals, in fact, are a theme throughout the entire book, as well as the human protagonists. But one of the main human protagonists, Lala, as she's mostly known throughout the book, is, I think, what she's described as an animal empath.
Yes.
So what exactly is that?
So that's somebody who can feel both the physical pain of animals and also the physical joy of animals and also the emotions of animals.
And it seems that she can relate to animals much more than she can humans. And, something happens later in the book that kind of flips a switch on that. But really, she has an inability to connect to humans, but her ability to connect to animals is just this profound thing, and it seems to spark from an incident that happened early on. I found it really shocking. It was the way to open the book because it sets the stage for her, I suppose, emotional trauma, because she was abandoned essentially by her mother, kind of in different capacities, but in a very real sense, in basically the opening scene of the book.
Yes, that is certainly one of the themes of the book, is abandonment. And when Lala's 8, she's abandoned by her mother because of something that happens on a lake, and she struggles with that issue of abandonment throughout her childhood. But the book is really set mostly during her adulthood. But she continues to struggle with those issues of abandonment during her adulthood.
So her mother abandons her at this icy lake. She kind of falls through, but a dog steps in, and the dog seems to be protecting her and watching over, and that seems to spark this relationship then that she has throughout the entire book of her relationship with animals.
Yes, yeah, that's the intention, is that and the way that I hoped readers would read the book is that from that moment when this dog really doesn't physically save her but emotionally saves her, helps her kind of hold on until help gets there, that she is gifted with this ability to be an animal empath and to feel, again, what animals feel. So no, I'm not an animal empath. So where did the idea come from? I'm somewhat obsessed with animals. I have rescued a number of animals, and I have volunteered at the shelter, and I don't eat animals, so I'm a vegan. And I was writing this book, and when I start the book, she wasn't an animal empath. She was just a character who loved animals and who had a very tight connection to animals. But as happens when you're writing, you discover things about characters, especially in early drafts. You discover more and more about the characters. And I discovered that she could feel what animals feel physically in her own body. And I was so thrilled when I discovered that. First of all, I love magical realism, and that's a thread of magical realism that goes through the book. I love reading magical realism. I love writing magical realism. So that was just thrilling. And I thought readers would so enjoy, following a character around and seeing the world through the eyes of a character who could feel what animals are feeling. And I have to say, too, I'm concerned about animal suffering, both of animals in the wild through habitat destruction and also domestic animals. And I thought this would also be a way to show that without it being too heavy or pedantic. Really just a way to have this character see it, and then through the character have the reader see it.
Mm-hmm. As Maeve pointed out, she has such a much better understanding of animals than people, and part of that is how she was raised. So her father, Zeb, is a burglar, robs houses, and once her mother abandons her and he's on his own with her, he takes her out of school. She is isolated from other children her age. She's really just lives a life with her father, and she learns how to rob houses with him. And the precipitating action of the book is that he gets arrested. So I wanted to, I was very curious. There's so many details about how to rob a house. And I was curious of, what your experience is with that, or, what kind of research you had to do, because it was really fascinating. I feel like I could probably go to the suburbs of Denver and rob some houses if I need to.
Well, certainly that wasn't my intention with the book, but I did have to do an enormous amount of research about burglars. And luckily there are materials out there. So You can read psychologists and sociologists and criminal justice people who have interviewed burglars, in jails to talk about, how to find out how they practice their craft. And one of the reasons they do that, well, psychologists and sociologists, because they're interested and curious, and it's part of what they study, but criminal justice people do it because it's a way to prevent burglaries if you know how they do it. So I did a lot of research on that. I also watched a lot of YouTube videos. I mean, there are a lot of lock picking and not so much burglary, but more lock picking, and actually some burglary ones too on YouTube, and you can watch them. And I almost hate to say that on the radio, but in fact they're out there, and you can watch them. I was also, and this is not so much the details of burglary so much, but when I was growing up, our house was robbed numerous times, and I lived in Queens, New York at the time. And so that was more the emotional piece of it, maybe knowing what people would feel when their houses were burglarized rather than how to do it, because I didn't ever learn how they did it. I just knew they had come into our house. Yeah.
So when Zev gets arrested, Lala's in vet school. She's grown up. She's going to become a vet. She's a year from graduating. She's really kind of turned her back on burglary and is trying to make an honest living and work with the animals, use this empathic ability to help her in her practice as she moves forward. But when he gets arrested, suddenly she needs a lot of money quickly. And so what does she do and how does she justify it?
Right, so she doesn't know any other way to earn a lot of money quickly other than to rob houses, which she's pretty much an expert at. She spent her childhood doing that. So she decides that she will return short term. In her mind, it's, well, I'll return for a couple of months. I'll earn enough to pay my father's legal bills. That will prevent him. He'll have a great lawyer. That will prevent him from going to prison. And that's the course she sets out on now. She justifies it by saying, well, I will help animals in those homes. And so she chooses homes where she can sense an animal's suffering. And sometimes it's suffering because it has a physical, ailment. Most of the time that's the issue, and she goes in and she does, whether it's, treat them with medicine, or raise, or lower the temperature, or raise the temperature if it's too hot for them, or leave a note sometimes, which puts her at great peril. But she does it anyway because she wants to help the animal. So she'll leave a note for the owner saying, hey, you better get this animal to the vet because it's got a condition.
Those were my absolute favorite scenes in the book. I almost could have taken a whole book of her robbing houses, because the way she robs the houses are so interesting because she gives such great details. But then the animals she meets, one's a parrot, another's a dog. I could have had 40 of those. I mean, did you have more scenes like that you wrote that you had to cut back on? Because it felt like, to me, that could have taken over the book, and I, as a reader, might not have been upset about that.
Yeah, I definitely had more burglary scenes, but I wanted there to be a balance between the relationships that she has with her father, with her friend Nat, and some of the backstory as well. I wanted to be in there, and at some point in the book, when I started the book, it was just Lala's story, but at some point when I was writing it, I was having so much fun writing Zev, her father, that I really wanted to give him a lot of scenes, and I even decided to make him a point of view character. I just really loved writing about him. I thought he was also really interesting in ways that Lala wasn't, and vice versa, and I thought they were great complements to each other, and I thought the book would also be interesting as a father-daughter story, rather than just a daughter who needs to overcome certain obstacles. So that then I had to cut back on some of the burglary scenes in order to make room for Zev's story.